Okay, we're continuing on this idea of quadratic equations. In this case, here in this example, y equals to x times 1 times x plus 3. It clearly doesn't look like what we were talking about before. Remember that a quadratic equation looks like y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So clearly what's going on? Well, one, there's a bunch of parentheses, so I kind of want to get rid of that. And the second thing is that, well, if I don't see that x squared, what can I possibly do? This is what we call the distributive property. The distributive property is essentially saying, hey, wait a minute, I notice I have two things that I can multiply together. And so ultimately what we can do is, well, multiply two of them together. Let's try doing that. Well, if I need to multiply, I have to ask myself, what are the two things I'm multiplying? I see here, this is probably the first one, x minus 1, while the second thing is probably x plus 3. And they're separated by the parentheses. So that tells us what we're multiplying. How are we going to multiply? Is through this thing called the box method. So we're going to call it the box method. Here's how the box method works. All you essentially have to do is, guess what? Draw a box. In order for us to draw the box, there are a couple things that we need to do. The box needs to include the two things that we're multiplying. So before, we just said that we're going to multiply x minus 1. And then we have to look at the second thing we're multiplying and put it up top, x plus 3. Now all we need to do is then multiply it. As a suggestion, one thing that we do is we always separate it into mini boxes based on how many signs there are. So I noticed that there's a plus sign, so I made a line over there. And then because there's a negative sign here, I made a line in the middle, creating 4 boxes. All we have to do now is multiply. X times x. Then we have the next one, 3 times x. So I'm going to say plus 3x. Trying the next one, negative 1 times x gives us negative 1x. And lastly, negative 1 times 3, giving us negative 3. Great, now we just have to combine them all together. X times x is, wait a minute, that's x squared. There's two x's, so we call it x squared. Plus 3x minus 1x minus 3. And when I have this answer, one thing that I noticed too is I can combine 3x minus 1x. 3x minus 1x, well, that's saying 3 minus 1. That gives us 2. So we'll say plus 2x minus 3. And that's the answer to this one. Now, let's try a little bit of a harder example through this one. So let's just say, for example, I had y equals, we'll do negative 3 parentheses, 2x minus 1 squared plus 5. Okay, a lot of stuff is happening here. And especially, I don't notice here that I have the two parentheses. But if you kind of notice how we created our x squared, we got it since we got two x's here. We have one here, the other here. That's how we created x squared. I see here that I also have a square here. So guess what? I'm going to write the same thing twice. What would that look like? Well, in this case, since I have 2x minus 1 being squared, I write it twice. 2x minus 1, parentheses, 2x minus 1, plus 5. I have to ask myself, hey, wait a minute, don't I have two things that I can multiply? And the answer is yes. It's oddly similar to the first one. We have 2x minus 1, and this one, 2x minus 1. So let's try to make something out of that. Let's make the box. I'm going to make a box based on these. So here we go. I'm going to put 2x minus 1, and again, 2x minus 1. Separating them, just as before, into 4 boxes. And now I'm going to multiply. I see here I have 2 times 2, so that gives me 4x squared. And you might be asking, where did I get that square from? Well, again, x times x. X times x gives me x squared. Then you keep on going. What is 2 times negative 1? Oh my gosh, that's negative 2x. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2, and I include the x. Same thing happens here. Same numbers. And then lastly, negative 1 times negative 1 gives me positive 1. I'm going to fully write this out. And I notice that just like before in the previous answer, I can combine like terms. I notice that this is an x, this is an x. So what I can do is I can combine them and see that I get 4x squared minus 4x plus 1. But I'm not done yet. And the reason why is because I have here the negative 3 and the positive 5 that I didn't use. So I need to use them. Well, seeming as though I was trying to figure out this whole thing for this, I'm just going to replace it. I'm going to replace this whole 2x minus 1 with the answer I just got. So let's see what that looks like. We're going to say y equals negative 3, parentheses, this whole thing that I just found out, 4x squared minus 4x plus 1 plus 5. So I essentially got this, and I put it into here. Now I have to ask myself, wait, how do I get rid of that negative 3? Again, it looks like the box method. There are two numbers that I'm multiplying. So we write it one more time. Negative 3 followed by the box. And we get 4x squared plus minus 4x, I apologize. And then plus 1. Again, separating them out just like this. Now we have to multiply. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12x squared. I see here I have negative 3 times negative 4, that's positive 12. And then negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. So that gives us our final answer, for this part at least, as negative 12x squared plus 12x minus 3. Now you might be asking yourself, wait, we didn't do anything with the plus 5. That's why we bring it back. So we'll say as one final time, y equals negative 12x squared plus 12x minus 3 plus 5. Aha, now I can see that I can combine these two numbers at the end, and I have to ask myself, okay, what's 5 minus 3? Well, 5 minus 3 is 2, so I can just say negative 12x squared plus 12x plus 2. And this is officially our final answer. So at the end of the day, when we're doing these two example problems, we've noticed that, hey, we want to make it so that it can look like this, ax squared plus bx plus c. And we do that through the distributive property, and how we do the distributive property is by using the box method. And that's essentially it.